What did you used to do as a kid that was super embarrassing, but you didn't realize it at the time? When I was little, my aunt had a dog that was really well trained. They used to play this game where she would lie on the floor face down while covering the sides of her face with her hands, and the dog would try to nuzzle his nose in to free her face. I thought this was amazing. A few months later, my family rescued a great big Malamute dog who was about a year old. He had some behavioral issues that I was completely unaware of. I used to try and recreate the game that my aunt played with her dog. I'd lie on the floor in a ball and wait for my new dog to display the same act of loyalty. Every time, I'd hear him scramble across the floor at me, and then he'd jump on me. I thought, this is awesome. He loves me. So, naturally, I showed everyone this little trick I taught him. Turns out, of course, that this dog was humping me. I showed a ton of people in my neighborhood. I talked myself up as if I was this amazing dog trainer with a natural gift for animals. Then, I curled up in a ball on the floor and proceeded to be molested by my dog. Not a single neighbor told me it was wrong, and I can only assume that they stood there uncomfortably until my dog finished, or I got up. By the time I finally showed my parents, they talked some sense into me and got me to stop doing the trick. I didn't realize until years later that I was being humped. When I was very young, I used to love to go out to the country and just watch cows. My grandmother would usually take me. I don't remember this at all, but one night my parents had friends over and were out sitting on the side porch. I was always a bit of a show off when I was kid. I walked out in the front yard, pulled my pants down, and yelled, "Hey everyone, look, I'm a cow. Moo." I then proceeded to drop a shit in the yard. When I was young, like 6 or 7 years old, I didn't really understand how religion works. I just thought God was this guy who lived in the sky and saw and knew everything. I also knew the word sin and knew it meant to do something bad. Well, every time I did something that I thought might be a sin, I started getting all worried that it would make God mad and he would send me to hell. So every night in bed I would start praying to God, asking him to forgive me for every single sin that I committed. After asking for forgiveness, I would proceed to beat the shit out of myself. Depending on how bad the sin was, I would punch myself in the face a certain number of times. Snuck a cookie out of the jar earlier. 3 punches. Got in a fight with my sister. 5 punches. I didn't hold back either. I thought I was keeping myself out of hell, so I was serious about it. I brought myself to tears sometimes. Oh God. When I was 8, I was laying on my bed sucking in my stomach and pushing everything toward the middle to make it look like I had a weird 6-pack. Suddenly a loud sucking in sensation and noise occurred. Then with a push, out came a loud farting noise. My new step siblings all had cool weird bodily things they could do, so I was really excited to show them that I could fart on command. They wouldn't know that it wasn't coming from my butt, I thought, and they didn't. They gleefully watched and cheered me on as I did my double fart over and over on the living room floor. My dad and stepmom walked into the room and asked what we were all laughing about, so of course I had to show them. I don't remember the specifics of their reactions, except that after like the 5th double fart they asked me to stop. I thought I had unlocked some sort of secret farting ability, but yeah, the adults knew what was up. So yeah, I queefed in front of my dad. Multiple times. My grandfather was pretty racist and used horrible language. I grew up in a tiny rural town with very few black people. At Kmart, I remember saying to my mom, "Look mom, a nigger." She was mortified, and my parents are totally not racist at all. God, I still have nightmares about this. Not necessarily what I did, but my cousin. I was 13, he was 10. He had just come back from school and had to tell me about his new superpower. Apparently his PP was a magic stick that would point in the direction of a girl he liked if he looked at her long enough. He learned which girls he liked using his powers, which he thought were exclusive to himself. TL. Dr. Young cousin believed boners were his exclusive superpower. Finally, in AskReddit I can relate with a good story. I was at 7th grade when we're having a biology lesson. It was about human reproduction. I've heard about sex before, but I never realized it was that important to life and whatnot. I forgot exactly what my friend asked to the teacher, but he was kinda at a loss for words on what he's trying to say. Trying to ask in his behalf, my stupid mouth suddenly started to blurt out the only thing that's running through my mind, what I thought he was gonna ask. I asked the teacher in a loud proud voice. I think what he was trying to say is that, could two penises go inside in one vagina? The teacher was baffled, and the class was at a full silence. I really thought it was an honest real question, and I thought the teacher didn't really understand my question. So I went ahead and further elaborate my question. To this day, that conversation still haunts me. My uncle always told me how to swear, and that all priests were assholes. So during one prayer session in a totally quiet Greek church, I started pointing at the priest and yelling, "Asshole, you are an asshole." During recess, I would pull my coat over my legs, so it looked as if I just had feet at the end of my torso. I would hop around and act like a deranged Furby. I was not alone in this. My neighbor actually got stuck in his coat while waiting for the bus one morning, and the bus driver had to get off and help him. When I was in 2nd grade, my mom took me and my older brother to the doctor's office for a checkup. They had a TV playing a show about the benefits of breastfeeding babies. My older brother and I were enthralled with this show. At one point it talked about how breastfed babies were better behaved children or something along them lines. After it ended, we got into the little kid fights and arguments that we always did. He did something to make me extremely mad and I responded at the top of my lungs, "I can tell you weren't a breastfeed baby." I can remember this packed waiting room burst out laughing. My mom beat my little ass when we got home. When my father got home, my mother was retelling the story to him. He thought it was the absolute funniest thing ever, and he still tells me about it to this day, still tells me about it 20 years later. I lived in a condominium for the most part of my childhood. I lived on a 2nd floor, so when I was around 6 I thought it would be pretty funny to pee through the window to the outside world. This was my modus operandi. I stood on the windowsill, put my pants down. For some reason I preferred to pee this way, and proceeded to urinate. I like to target people, but I never managed to actually hit them with my stream. I think the condo got sued by someone. I don't really know. That's just some nasty rumor that got to me. Oh, and the only ones that knew about this habit were my brothers. I'm 20 now, so I'd be pretty safe telling my parents that I was the little germ that caused all the backlash back then. When I was in elementary school, I had something I would do at lunch that probably made me look astoundingly stupid. If, when I was finished with my food, my friends weren't talking about anything interesting, I would look up at the lights and sort of spin and flail my head around for a few seconds, then shut my eyes really hard to see the sort of pattern I had made. Repeat this for about the last 10 minutes of the lunch period. No one ever said anything to me about it, which is weird, because I had this one shitty friend who was never shy about finding things to make fun of me for. It took me a while to realize that it made me look like a greater autist. I still do it though from time to time when I'm alone, or just with my wife. It always gets a laugh out of her, but I manage to control myself when in public nowadays. My sister loves to tell this story. When I was 4 to 5, I was nuts about dogs, mainly German Shepherds, because we had to. My sister brings home a good guy friend of hers from school, and they babysit me. I was very observant of our 2 dogs, and noticed they sniffed people and sometimes their crotches upon greeting them at the door. Often TG greeted person would get their hands licked too. Me, never having met my sister's friend before, ran straight up to him and said, "Woof woof, I'm a dog," and promptly smushed my face into his crotch and took big sniffs. Then stuck my tongue out and went to start licking him. My sister, crying with laughter, stopped me before I could. Thankfully, apparently the poor guy was so shocked he didn't know what to do and froze. My sister will probably tell that one at my wedding for sure. You know, when you are young and you have time on your hands, you find interesting and creative ways to eat things. I ate a lot of fruit, and I like to eat bananas by scraping the whole banana past my teeth, layer by layer, because it would get all mushy. This involved inserting the whole banana into my mouth to start the teeth scraping from the base. Accommodating some of it into my throat wasn't the thrill, but more a means to an end, so I could eat the whole banana my special way. My mum chose to ignore it and hope I would stop. My dad was much less comfortable and started shouting at me, and I was quite stubborn, so I would further insist on eating it with more enthusiasm. I wasn't allowed to eat bananas in front of people, then we didn't buy bananas at all anymore. No one ever explained why, and I honestly thought they just thought I was gross. In my 20s I randomly thought of this when I ate a banana and just sat there like, oh, TLDR, I used to deep throat bananas when I ate them. I was too much into The Simpsons in the 90s and would regularly quote lines from whatever episode I watched the night before. I remember because Homer spoke to his own brain, I began doing that. I'd think something in my head, and while the class was quiet, I'd answer myself back, but it would obviously be all weird to everyone. It just seemed like I was blurting shit out. I'm going to do well on this test, I'd think. You give the answers, I mark the paper. Deal. I'd say aloud. Just stupid shit like that. The teacher, I think it was 3rd grade, BTW, eventually told my dad about it, and he made me stop. I also just remembered that in either 2nd or 3rd grade, if I had a booger in my nose and wanted to pick it without anyone noticing, I would put both my hands against my face and slide one finger into a nostril slickly. If someone would ask what I'm doing, I would say, Luke, I'm your father. I'd impersonate Darth Vader while picking my nose. Lol. I did that to make it seem like I had a reason for covering my mouth/nose. TL. Doctor, I'm embarrassed of my younger self. When I was around 7 years old, I heard the phrase "my condolences" in a movie, possibly Breakfast Club. I asked my older brother what it meant, and he said congratulations. I thought it sounded really smart and would try to impress adults, teachers, friends, parents, etc. with my newly learned vocabulary. Whenever an adult would tell me some news, like we got a new dog or we are visiting family in Ohio over the holidays, I would respond with my condolences. I remember getting strange looks from the adults, but assumed it was because they were just really amazed by my awesome vocabulary. At the time, Mom and I lived in a part of Georgia with very few blacks people, and we are Scotch-Irish, so no one in my family had dark skin. We were checking out at the grocery store and this really dark black guy was in front of us. Mom was busy with getting coupons and money out, so I politely went up to him and asked him why he was so brown. He thought it was funny and tried to explain. My mother was mortified. Well, we had just moved to a new town and my mom was hosting some ladies from the church my dad would now be pastoring. My mother was nervous and was trying her best to make a good impression on the ladies there. Then I come into the room, probably loving the idea of the spotlight, and jump on my mom's lap and start bouncing my mom's boobs around saying, "I love playing with these things." I found out about this story when I later visited and stayed at someone's house, since we had moved a while back, that was there. She couldn't stop laughing when she saw me, now in high school, because she would think of what I did when I was 6. When my mom was getting me registered for kindergarten, I was extremely quiet the whole time. They were trying to get me to talk, but I just wouldn't. Anyway, my dad hates crows, general nuisance, get into trash and whatnot, and he started calling them black bastards. Well, the registration's pretty much over, and I decided it'd be a good idea to say my dad, and I hate black bastards. Thank God no one there was black. After the obvious shock it caused, my mom had to explain to them that I was talking about those pesky crows. After we got home she was pissed at my dad.